Well, holy cow. I guess we're live with all of this crazy tech stuff going on with me right now. I'm sorry, guys, to be such a late start. Um, I don't know what is going on. Doesn't look like the stream's coming through well either. Can you hear me? Are we there? Am I going to have to finagle some stuff? All right, error. YouTube is not receiving enough video to maintain smooth streaming. As such, viewers will experience buffering. Well, guys, I am not sure what is going on, other than I basically started to get everything set up, and everything has been nutty, including my OBS. So, um, YouTube is not receiving enough video to maintain. Sounds like my mic is good. For some reason, I'm not streaming on DLive either, but Entropy's running. I did let my wife touch my computer yesterday, which is probably why it's all messed up today. um, let's see. Yeah, like my OBS is messed up. I think my there was something going on with my actual my antivirus software clogging the works up is what it looked like to me in the end. Because I All right, well now it says stream quality is excellent. Yeah, my computer was like running, like I could hear all the fans and motors inside running, and I was like, dude, what in the world's going on? And then OBS wasn't running appropriate screens or anything for me. Like I can usually, right, you set up screens and switch between them, and all of a sudden it wouldn't have my display capture. And when I first opened OBS, this was an hour ago before I went live, I had no audio. I had no screen capture or audio, and I didn't do anything to it. But this is what it does on occasion. It's kind of finicky, uh, but you know, it's it's what everybody uses because it's free software. I could use maybe Restream. They use a version, I think, of OBS that's modified, and a couple people use them modified OBS system. But for now, this is what I got. This is what I've been using. So again, it doesn't look like I'm on D Live today. Oh well, I am on the Entropy. If you all would like to go over there and donate, please remember to give me a like. Well, hello, Holly. I don't know if you just got in, but big old technical difficulties today. Big old technical difficulties. So I'm actually just starting. But it looks like all the bugs have worked themselves out. So before I even tried to stream, I had issues. Um, oh, okay. Now it says start. So if I hit start, will I be streaming on DLive is the question. It says broadcasting. Wow. Let's see if I can find myself over there real quick. Sorry, guys. The beginning of these streams are always going to be housekeeping until I get like decent at the streaming stuff, and it's probably gonna be a long time because I'm a boomer. At least when it comes to tech. Yes, I'm coming across on DLive now. Awesome. Wow. Okay, well, that means we're up and running. 100%. Says stream status is excellent. All right, guys. Well, I'm going to get back into what we were reading last week with Bastiat. I said I'd cover the Declaration of Independence. I'm going to talk about the federal policing, but I set the stream up, I think, Friday evening or Saturday. I don't even remember, but I set it up, of course, ahead of time. I didn't even mess with it today to get it up and running until about an hour ago, and then I'm glad I had pre-set it because there has been all these technical issues, not just with the stream itself, but with my OBS and computer itself for some reason. In any case, we have from the FMCSA, that is the Federal Motor Carrier Safety Administration, one of those alphabet organizations you probably never heard of. And they are declaring a regional emergency for Federal Motor Carrier Safety Administration, a regional emergency declaration to Alabama, Arkansas, the District of Columbia, Delaware, Florida, Georgia, Kentucky, Louisiana, Maryland, Mississippi, New Jersey, New York, North Carolina, Pennsylvania, South Carolina, Tennessee, Texas, and Virginia. I was really surprised that West Virginia wasn't wrapped up into this, given that every state around it, except for Ohio, is listed. What I think it has to do with is the way these pipelines run. So if you hadn't heard, there was a cyber attack that shut down the pipelines and will be making gas and other things a little bit more expensive temporarily here on the East Coast. And not just the East Coast, but part of the South, of course. So this is kind of a big deal unless they get it back working very quickly. And I wanted to bring this up because it's kind of interesting. It's kind of telling that this is going on. I'm going to throw something out there, a little conspiratorial thinking here. But there was a event that happened back in February in conjunction with Davos, and I tried to cover this. I never really got around to it. And that is the Cyber Polygon of 2021, two-stage supply chain attack simulation. Now, this went on, this goes on all the time, every year, much like the event 201 happened right before the coup. And again, I'm not saying that they are correlated, that these things are correlated, but what I'm saying is that these people bring this about, they talk about it, and then things happen all of a sudden, things that we haven't seen happen before. I don't know if I've ever heard of a pipeline being shut down by a cyber attack. Seems pretty interesting to me. So, this is the World Economic Forum will stage another cyber attack exercise as it continues to prep for a potential cyber pandemic that founder Klaus Schwab says will be worse than the current global crisis. Again, this was back in February. I have several articles here. This one's from the Sociable as well, the next one. This was February 10th, 2021. Now, again, I was going to talk about this in those weeks. Now, if you don't recall, I was in Florida at the beginning of February, and I come back and whatever else, and the news cycle continued, and I guess I kind of buried it because I thought something else was maybe more important. But other people did cover this, and if you listen to some of the people that I suggest you might listen to, I don't mean like mainstream. I think you should listen to mainstream people, not necessarily legacy news, but I think you should listen to mainstream people so you know where the pulse of society is at. But when I suggest listening to people like Jay Dyer or James Corbett, that's what I'm saying. These people that have a little bit more grounded information and understanding of how all these things fit together. A fun show that I don't watch as often as I used to, but that I watch pretty often is Quite Frankly. I love Frank's show, and Frank will entertain all kinds of ideas. Now, Frank was a bit of a trust the plan kind of guy, not fully, but he was kind of into the QAnon thing. As people were, I know because I've talked with them, and I told them from the beginning, I think it's a big LARP. It's a bunch of nonsense. Now I, in retrospect, think, well, that was all psyop. That was probably a NSA CIA joint venture to manipulate the United States and get the deep state more power as they have. In any case, enough of my speculation and ramblings. Let's see. Real quick, Holly says, Line 5 is the one that is affecting Ontario and the busiest airports in Canada. And this is that one Michigan wants to close May 12th. Yeah, and the thing is with this, of course, we know that the pipelines The Keystone Pipeline was a big deal, and Biden wanting to shut that down. I Again, it's speculation, guys, but this is very suspect, in my opinion, that these things happen when these same folks have a huge environmentalist agenda at the same time, and that environmentalist agenda, of course, happens to coincide with this great wealth transfer where you have to pay a bunch of taxes in order to use energy. Of course, wealthy people, it doesn't matter to them, but toward the average citizen, it is a significant thing. And of course, any sort of middle class that we have, this will absolutely destroy if this is a continuation of things. We know energy and power problems always have large consequences in the end. Like either people can be overheated, or they can because they live in areas, frankly, they shouldn't be living in, but or they of course can't keep food. Heating's important, so it's not like electricity is just some novel thing. Yes, it's new for us, but we also don't know how to live and survive like we used to. So it's a pretty important thing that we have electricity. So let's read a little bit of this. I'm not going to get into a ton of detail about this. I just want you guys to be aware of it as usual. Yeah, Keystone killed Alberta's oil industry. No doubt, Holly. Yeah, but that's the point. That's the point of all of this. Because everything you have to understand comes back to trying to demoralize you, trying to basically beat down the population, to gaslight them into thinking, oh, this can't be true, oh, blah, 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 or to go, oh, we can't win, we can't possibly fight against them, we can't possibly survive all the horrible things that they do. That kind of mentality. The mentality, well, they run all the banks, they control everything, we might as well just give up. Well, go ahead and give up, buddy. I don't know what to tell you, man. I'm a fighter naturally. I just will not give in to this nonsense. I don't like bullies. I've always been this way. So, just checking around real quick here, guys. So anyways, it says the World Economic Forum will stage another cyber attack exercise as it continues to prep for potential cyber pandemic that founder Klaus Schwab will be worse than the current global crisis. The SolarWinds hack served as a wake-up call to the supply chain attack vulnerabilities still present in the public and private organizations, and it served as a warning that the next breach could be exponentially worse and spreading through any device connected to the internet. Well, I don't know why all these things are hooked up to the internet and the grid in any way, shape, or form. This would be like having our nuclear weapons hooked up to the internet to just be hackable. The nukes were literally not on the interwebs for that very reason. It's a more complicated system. So real quick, let's just watch this video that they have here. See, I'll pull it up on YouTube for you.
The COVID-19 pandemic has shaken our economies and societies to the core and shown us how vulnerable we are to biological threats. In the digital world, similar risks are being overlooked right now. A cyber attack with COVID-like characteristics would spread faster and further than any biological virus. Its reproductive rate would be around 10 times greater than what we've experienced with the coronavirus. To give you an idea, one of the fastest worms in history, the 2003 Slammer sapphire worm, doubled in size approximately every 8.5 seconds, infecting over 75,000 devices in 10 minutes and almost 11 million devices in 24 hours. Fortunately, at least until now, cyber attacks have not impacted our health the way pandemics have.
Here's something interesting about this video. It's very subversive, and I mean that in that they're taking something that's biological and natural and subverting the idea of biology and nature and making it connected to technology, because the goal is that. The goal is the transhumanistic Neuralink, the hive mind. This is all in Klaus Schwab's or the World Economic Forum's writings about the fourth industrial revolution, folks. They want you to be connected. They want you to have instant access to the internet within your mind. It's a interesting thing. Hey, Sam, thanks for joining, bud. apologies yesterday. Apparently, we saw after we got done streaming, you sent us a super chat over on Entropy. Um, so Tank, I don't know what he was doing, but he should have been following that a little bit more clearly, and because I saw it afterwards. So appreciate the donation, bud. So apologies for not reading your super chat. We just didn't see it. By the way, of course, I have also coronavirus like a cyber attack, so that really is just a scare word now. Well, maybe. Maybe. I didn't think you'd have a problem with it, brother, but, I'm a nice guy. Let's be transparent, and let's let's not, let's stick with our word. We tell you guys we're going to read super chats. We want to try and do that. Yeah, the coronavirus being what it is, being highly survivable, is of course an excuse. And the point of this cyber polygon stuff is that they just need more excuses. This is what the government does. This is the same thing that is going on, right, with firearms. They want to take your guns. Well, they use the excuses of a mass shooter, but they don't talk about just, last Saturday, the 7 people that were murdered in Baltimore. They don't talk about that, but they will talk about these other things. It's pretty sad. It's pretty gross, but the reality is it's just a means to scare people. And again, like the language here, I'm going to click on it. We'll listen to the last minute of it. The language here is subversive because it's getting people close to the idea that we are this cybernetic organism. And technically we are. What I'm doing right now is I'm, connecting to you and you're connected to me through this, and our social skills are changing because of this thing of technology. But this thing right here, the phone, we all have, and we're on it all the time. There's not much of a difference between that interface and the interface that they eventually want, where it is directly downloaded into your mind. So.
But the economic damages, and therefore the impact they have had on our daily lives, have been equal and sometimes even greater. You see, the only way to stop the exponential propagation of a COVID-like cyber threat is to fully disconnect the millions of vulnerable devices from one another and from the internet. All of this in a matter of days. A single day without the internet would cost our economies more than $50 billion, and that's before considering the economic and societal damages should these devices be linked to essential services such as transport or healthcare. As the digital realm increasingly merges with our physical world, the ripple effects of cyber...
Did you catch that? Did you catch that? See, and guys, I didn't watch this video ahead of time or anything like that. I literally had to go through my phone because I use numerous browsers on my phone, but my DuckDuckGo browser is my go-to to do research, and I did that back when these articles came out. So I had to go through my phone and all the tabs still open in them to find these articles. But the point is, he just said that they are the cyber world and the physical world are ever increasingly being connected, or something to that extent.
The physical world, the ripple effects of cyber attacks on our safety just keep on expanding.
Let me go a little bit further back.
These devices be linked to essential services such as transport or healthcare. As the digital realm increasingly merges with our physical world.
As the digital realm increasingly merges with our physical world. Seems pretty obvious to me. Our brains run on chemicals and electrical impulses. Yes, they do. But I do believe that there is more to it. There is, of course, the ghost in the machine, if you would. And I don't think that messing with our biological nature and combining it with some sort of transhumanistic ideal is it's good at all. I don't think that that's helping humanity. That's us losing our humanity and all of the goodness that is in there. It is the primary one of the primary concerns of, let's say, the cyberpunk genre is literally what this means, the impact of it on the individual person, that they are losing themselves and becoming more and more machine. Long before that trope, of course, was the idea of Darth Vader, right? When Obi-Wan says he's more machine now than man, his argument was saying he doesn't have the biological nature that connects him to each other, to the social anymore. He's just a machine.
The ripple effects of cyber attacks on our safety just keep on expanding at a faster pace than what we're preparing for. COVID-19 was known as an anticipated risk. So is the digital equivalent. Let's be better prepared for that one. The time is now.
So this is the also the expansion of, well, the government needs to protect you. We need to keep you safe from these things. So you need to understand that we need to regulate the internet, and we need to protect you from the bad people on the interwebs and their free speech and all that stuff, right? It's more of the nanny state. So directly from the World Economic Forum, adverting a cyber pandemic, how businesses are building a global response to cybersecurity risks. And this was in January of 2021. The impact. The World Economic Forum Center for Cybersecurity has created a community of security and technology leaders to identify future global risks from the next generation technology in order to avert a cyber pandemic. What policies, practices, and partnerships are needed to prevent such a cyber pandemic? The question was raised in sessions on Thursday, 28th and Friday, 29th January at the Davos Agenda 2021, featuring commentary from Checkpoint Software Technologies, Cloudflare, Fortinet, Interpol, Cybersecurity Agency of Singapore, and Ostcyber. The forum has created Future Series Cybercrime 2025, a joint program of work with the University of Oxford, Oxford Martin School, enabling organizations to share and develop research, insights, and responses to future risks as a community. Now, some of these ideas, right? We like having cybersecurity isn't the problem. It is the way that they go about these things, in my opinion, that is the issue, and their goals. And again, the Fourth Industrial Revolution talks about this clearly. The initiative convenes over 150 global experts from the world's leading companies, research institutions, and public policy departments. Major collaborators include Palo Alto Networks, MasterCard, and KPMG, and supporters from such institutions as Interpol, ENISA, and NIST. Now, this should be quite alarming to you, because I keep telling you that this is what Davos and all that is about. This is what the UN's about. This is how our government actually works. We have a global government run by NGOs, and what we're seeing right here is the banks, who are private enterprises, groups like Interpol, which is not, and others are combining with each other to bring about the, one world government. It says the major collaborators include Palo Alto Networks. Collaborators. See, people on the left would say, I'm a conspiracy theorist because I'm talking about people collaborating. But it is in their own words. These people have major corporations, and they are dictating the way the world is going to go. It's nothing crazy. It's pretty simple. These people have power and authority. They think that they know better, and they're like, whoa, someone has to lead the world. We should do it. And along the way, they're going to put upon you a ton of authoritarianism. Let's see here. It says the programming in our devices has altered our neurochemical systems to such a point that severe addiction controls need to stay connected. Yeah, well, for sure. I mean, the dopamine hit, yeah, we talk about all that, 100%. And they're designed to be that way. I had to navigate the novelty of all this myself. Like, when people complain to me, they're like, Bill, well, you should, like Don's server, I'm in there. But when they complain, oh, you should be in the server, check it more often, or check your Twitter, or anything like that. No. I'll get around to it when I get around to it. I spent many a years single and too much time on Facebook or internet forums and chatting with people, arguing with people, having conversation, good, bad, and different. It was probably a lot of a time suck more than anything, and often kept me from sleeping well, I could have been doing other things that were more productive in my life. You have to understand how to use the tool and use the tool appropriately. So let's see. I've gone about, I think I started about 10 minutes late because I had all kinds of issues for those of you who are joining me a little bit late. But as usual, I'm around the 30-minute mark. So I'm going to, you guys just need to expect it every 30 minutes or so. I'm going to say, hey, like, share, subscribe, the thing. Help my channel grow. If you guys want to donate, there are links in the YouTube description for the entropy. Of course, you can just go over to entropy and look up all -1. I should pop up. But there are links there. You can donate directly if you wish to. There's a subscribe star. You can also donate on DLive, by the way. You can give me diamonds and lemons and all those other things if you wish. Of course, all of this is completely voluntary, and it's a matter if you guys want me to read questions or something, or you just want to tip me for the work that I'm doing. So, also from the World Economic Forum, Cyber Polygon. This is the event. Digitalization in the accelerated everywhere. New digital ecosystems are forming all around us, creating unnoticed linkages across services and supply chains. As the world grows more interconnected, the speed of development makes it difficult to assess the impact of change. A secure approach to digital development will determine the shape of our future for decades to come. Having the right skills in place is key to protecting organizations from attack now. What is Cyber Polygon? Cyber Polygon is a unique cybersecurity event that combines the world's largest technical training exercise for corporate teams and an online conference featuring senior officials from international organizations and leading corporations. The 2021 conference discusses the key risks of digitalization and the best practice for the secure development of digital ecosystems. In 2021, technical exercise builds the test and skills needed to protect our industries, centering on a targeted supply chain attack. Every year, the training brings together a global business and government agencies, again, to collaborate on technical exercises, and live stream draws in millions of spectators from across the globe. 120 teams from 29 countries took part in the technical cybersecurity training in 2020. The live stream viewership reached 5 million from 57 nations. A comprehensive report with detailed results, And it goes on about the event here in 2021. Again, business and governments from all around the world colluding, collaborating, conspiring about these things. And yet, somehow, we have this where this just happened. We weren't protected. This regional emergency declaration by the Federal Motor Carrier Safety Administration, once again, an alphabet organization you probably never heard of. A file on your phone called TimeSuck. So, from Event 201 to Cyber Polygon, and I bring this up because it's a reminder of how this happened before, right, with the COOF. Strange coincidences that they have these things right before an event happens. Of course, it's been a few months. This was back in the end of the end of January and beginning of February, but still. From Event 201 to Cyber Polygon, the World Economic Forum's simulation of coming cyber pandemic. Last year, the World Economic Forum teamed up with the Russian government and global banks to run a high-profile cybersecurity simulation that targeted the financial industry, an actual event that would pave the way for a reset of the global economy. What? That sounds like what they want, does it not? Let me enlarge this a little bit. Now, it's interesting how they mentioned that they teamed up with Russia. I don't know if you guys saw this, but, old Mr. Biden gives himself a statement today. Gave the American public a statement today. Didn't take any questions at the end. Well, it took sort of a question. And that's actually what I want to play to you. And of course, we can look at that ratio too. We're looking at this in real time. That's 962 likes and 10,000 downvotes. I think the only way you can see downvotes anymore too is directly on your computer, because I know on the apps they're not visible, at least on my phone. They're not visible anymore like they said they were going to do. Still, that's a nice ratio, don't you think? Oh, you know what? This is not the right video. I'm sorry, guys. I just realized this is from the 5th. Oh, come on. One month ago. It's like they don't want you to see the live coverage that just happened today. Oh, that's funny. Okay. Well, let's not worry about it too much. 10% likes to dislikes. Yeah. Um, let's see here. I'll get it here in a second, guys. My apologies for being a little tarded. All right, right here it is. That's all I want, guys. I just want the end.
In Russia, they have some responsibility to deal with this. Thank you.
Basically, he took one question, by the way, as usual.
21st century. That's the next stage. That's what we're doing right now. We're working to get that passed. I want to thank you all, and may God protect our troops. Thank you.
Mr. President, if you can't protect critical infrastructure from a criminal actor, how can you possibly protect it from a state actor?
We can do both. We will.
Do you think Russia is involved at all implicitly with that attack?
I'm going to have a conference. I'm going to be meeting with President Putin, and so far there is no evidence based on from our intelligence people that Russia is involved, although there is evidence that the actor's ransomware is in Russia.
That's all I wanted to bring up. So notice what they ask him. Notice we can do both. No pushing on that. No asking, to clarify or how we would do both. End of question. Then, is Russia involved? Well, I'm talking to Putin today. Seems like that Russia might be involved, but not the government, just somebody in Russia. Well, isn't that what usually the situation is? Isn't that normally the thing? And then, here it was. Over here we have that they put on the cybersecurity simulation with the World Economic Forum at Cyber Polygon. Like, I know, guys, there could be coincidences here. I'm just saying that it's all shady. It's all shady when you look at the official statements. Russia's so horrible. Biden loves Russia. Don't let them, like, fool you. Because the reality is that they only use Russia because it's an easy scapegoat that has no real power. Like, we can talk all day long about Russia being a military power in its region. 100% true. Russia does not have the economic power or the military might that it once did under the USSR. And it is not really a threat to Europe or anywhere else. Satellite, former Soviet bloc nations, sure. It's definitely not a threat to China. It's like being worried about North Korea or Iran. Now, them having nukes might be something to fear. Although I don't know why they can't have them, but everyone else and anyone else can. But the reality is they pretty much keep to themselves. They stay in their own nations, and they exercise, they flex a little bit every now and again to show how tough they are. That's about it. Um, you know, I don't know how long I've heard in my adult life, probably the last 20 years, that we're going to war to Iran. And I keep telling people every time it gets brought up, I'm like, we're not going to war with Iran. It's an impossible militarily strategic place to take. It is all mountain and all swamp. That's all that Iran is. It's never been taken. Well, it sort of was occupied at one point in history, but dude, it's just not going to happen. It's like the Afghanistan issue. You know, we can do so much there, but the bottom line is people are going to go run off, hide in the mountains, rough terrain. It's hard to get the people out, which is also why I advocate for, running off to the mountains here in the United States. Yeah, Russia, I mean, yeah. Well, Russia has this weird thing going on. I'm no expert in the Russian economy right now, but the Russians do have communist in power, and they do have some communism, but they have more open free markets. Again, they're kind of looking for a third or fourth way of economics, if you would, some mixed combination of things. But really, in my opinion, there's only three ways, right? There's a free market economy that the government has almost nothing to do with. There's the mixed economy, which would be the third way, which always ends up being some form of, more or less, becomes some form of fascism. And then there's the communistic, socialistic way, which basically evolves from or devolves from that third way of that fascistic mixed economy system. So, keeping it simple, guys. I know things are a little bit more complicated than that, but I'm not here to go on about the complexities of economics and all. There are other people way smarter than me that have written really big books that I can point you to that you can read about. So, anyways, it says on Wednesday, the World Economic Forum, along with Russia, Sberbank and its cybersecurity subsidy BuyZone, announced that a new global cyber attack simulation would take place this coming July to instruct participants in developing secure ecosystems by stimulating a supply chain cyber attack similar to the recent SolarWinds hack that would assess the cyber resilience of the exercise's participants. On the newly updated event website, the simulation, called Cyber Polygon 2021, ominously warns that given the digitization trend largely spurred by the COOF crisis, a single vulnerable link is enough to bring down an entire system, just like the domino effect, adding that a secure approach to digital development today will determine the future of humanity for decades to come. The thing is this is nothing revolutionary. We all know this is an issue. This is why I use VPN, and because I run things through Opera mostly, on my computer at least, and I use, like most people do, some sort of virus protection, because we know, especially in the late 90s and early 2000s, the Wild West days of the internet, we know that you could be highly vulnerable to picking up a virus and your whole system will be destroyed, right? So why was this pipeline not prepared? How was it hackable? Why isn't the federal government worried about its infrastructure like this? And also, why is this the thing? Because this is exactly what that article was just talking about, is it not? That this could break down the infrastructure? We're talking about gas, guys. This is already a bad position we're in right now, where gas and wood and obviously just regular grocery store prices are all going up. We've inflated our economy so much, and now this happens, and if they don't get it back on track very soon, it's going to cause shortages. Why were they aware of this but unable to prevent it? All questions I have personally. Well, here's something. This is a little bit old too. It's from around a similar period. This is March 4th. It's not that old, but this is Paul Joseph Watson. Well, it says Steve Watson, so maybe that's Paul's brother. I don't know. but it's from his website. The Guardian promotes global lockdown every 2 years to combat climate change. We told you this was coming, and that was a Guardian article. And the reason why is because this happened. It helped. The lockdowns had less travel, and it helped. But did it really? Because if they're just going, well, we have 10 years left, as AOC said. She said 12 years, 2 years ago. We have 10 years left to get these things back on track, or we're all going to die. Right? Well, how would having a lockdown every 2 years then get things back on track? I don't really understand the release, the cessation of these things, stopping the release of these chemicals that are put out all the time in the air that they're saying is driving this thing. But again, I am just going to say that these are somewhat potentially related, right? Again, it's speculation on my part. I'm always going to tell you when I'm speculating, but it seems really funny that the people who want these things to be implemented around the world are warning about these kind of cyber attacks, working with Russia. We have the president himself saying, oh, we know that it was likely from Russia, but not the Russian government. And then we have stuff like this where they're like, oh yeah, we need to stop these oil lines and whatever else. We need to have lockdowns to stop the carbon emissions, to save the planet. Always comes back to this. Here's another interesting one I just wanted to cover real quick. Not that it's that big of a deal. Chinese scientists discussed weaponizing the SARS 5 years before the pandemic. But if we went through the United States documentation, we would find nothing different. And here, I don't believe I'm going to play this, but just to put it on from NewsX, Chinese military scientists exposed discussed weaponizing SARS. But again, there's nothing new here. Well, it doesn't matter if I play this or not. There isn't anything I really care about in that article or in that presentation, because just like every nation does this. This was a big deal back in the day, right? When SARS was kind of new about weaponizing it, right? We've heard about the weaponization of all kinds of things, like VX gas or other things in the past, right? Biological weapons, things that are illegal to use by international treaties. It's talked about all the time. And governments, in secret, talk about using these things, and they will, and they do. Yeah, Thane, I don't know how old you are, but I'm 40, and yeah, I've been hearing it for that long at least. Shelley said, I interned at a pipeline company in the 90s. They had a whole room full of people from the SCADA system. So there should have been immediate alarms and notices. Yeah, well, there you go. I mean, here's the thing I do know for sure, Shelley, is that when you work for organizations and they're worried about balancing their budgets and their bottom lines or making profits, whatever, they're usually less concerned about the real threats of things. And I know this because, of course, having the professions I've had in the past, doing the work I'm used to, as well as the other staff I've worked with over the years, the other folks, I'm used to going to the leadership and saying, hey, you're going to have a huge problem on your hands. If you don't correct this, it's a simple fix. I'm also used to them, less so in the military, although they did it quite a lot, but at the sheriff's department, quite often ignoring us completely. And then the predictions we make come true, and then all of a sudden it's a big deal. Well, that's a problem of leadership. It's a problem of there not being leadership, because leaders are proactive. The bottom line, leaders take initiative. There's nothing behind, someone going, oh, well, that's not the bottom line right now. That's not going to happen. We're not going to need to worry about it. And it's like the person going, well, I deal with this every day, and I'm telling you right now, it's going to happen. And they go, oh, no, no, we'll deal with it then. And then it's the biggest thing ever. That's not leadership. That's called management. Management. Management means you deal with it when it happens, and you try to mitigate the problems. And the reality is that when you get things on the back end, you're not mitigating any problems. You're making them worse. You're exacerbating them. So let's see here. Let me close out a few things. The less tabs I have, the better. Yeah, Sam. Cutting corners on the security is probably a big part of it. Trust me. Like I said, they'll do anything to save a buck, and if they don't think that there's a real threat, they think they can get by, they will. I mean, um, the one thing we can probably all agree on is there's no system that is private-public partnership that it has the public partnership involved in it, government, that has ever done well or efficiently. They just don't. They don't. It's all about trying to get the most, squeeze the most out of whatever they can. And if there's a problem that's not that big of a deal in their forefront of their mind, it's going to get, it's going to put it on the back burner for sure. Right thing. It does happen at every job because we don't have any leadership in our society. I was taught to be a leader. Well, I've always been very individualistic and heterodox, but I was taught to be a leader in the military. Now, before that, I took over some leadership qualities to some extent and like with friend groups or whatever else. But, I was a kid. But even those gentlemen that I served with who were taught leadership skills, most of them never implemented them. For me, it came down to a matter of morality, generally. Despite me being immoral in many ways over the years, I do have a deep sense of honor and morality, and did when I was young. So that, for me, meant I needed to be the best leader for my troops. And so the Marines below me, I wanted to make sure we're taken care of. Not everyone thinks that way. Most people generally focus back inward and go, oh, now that I'm the leader, I get to screw off. I get to do all the stupid stuff. I get to treat people like trash. And of course, as I would say, that's the default of the world, though, right? That's right. People get complacent. All right, just to check a few things real quick, guys. And we'll keep going. I want to get into the law and all that, like I said I would. And the obviously I won't be reading as much as tomorrow because I wanted to talk about this. That is a big story, so it needs to be talked about. But I believe we were right here in Bastiat's The Law. So let's read this for a little bit. And we'll go through the declaration again, and we'll get back to heaven and earth, watch, 15, 20 minutes of that, and probably close it out for the day at 5 o'clock here. So let's try and stick on that. Maybe I'll go a little bit longer, but probably not much today because I have a birthing classes later tonight, which is about, well, the classes are 2 hours, and we tend to chat a lot with the couple as well that teach them. So, and we have about a 25, 30-minute drive to get there. So all in all, basically, once I leave the house here in a bit, I probably won't be home till 10:30 tonight. So, can't do a long stream today, guys, bottom line. The fate of nonconformist, if you suggest a doubt as the morality of these institutions, it is boldly said that you are a dangerous innovator, a utopian, a theorist, a subversive. You will shatter the foundation upon which society rests if you lecture upon morality or upon political science. There will be found official organizations petitioning the government in this vein of thought. That science no longer be taught exclusively from the point of view of free trade, of liberty, of prosperity, and of justice, as has been the case until now, but also in the future. Science is to be especially taught from the viewpoint of the facts and laws that regulate French industry. Facts and laws which are contrary to liberty, to property, and to justice. That in government endowed teaching, why that's covering that up there. It's weird. Anyways, I'm sorry. That government endowed, I lost my spot here. Government endowed teaching positions, the professor rigorously refrains from endangering the slightest degree the respect due to the law now in force. So let's break this down a little bit. If you suggest a doubt as the morality of these institutions, it is boldly said that you are a dangerous innovator, a utopian, a theorist, and a subversive. That is, if you and I challenge the current status quo of the government, we are the retrobates, right? That is the joke over on the ends justify the memes, that we are the deplorables, all of us, who do not agree with the government itself. If you lecture upon morality or upon political science, there will be found official organizations petitioning the government in this vein of thought. That science no longer be taught exclusively from the point of view of free trade. This is interesting, right? Because we see this now. We see this now within our own organizations. Look at the ACLU, right? The Anti-Defamation League. The NAACP. Look at the Southern Poverty Law Center and all of those organizations and what they do, what they're supposed to stand for, the rights of people, the civil rights of people, and how that you being not institutionalized as they are, you calling out against that, you are an evil person. So much so that in our day and age, we unpersons people. We don't allow them on the internet. Like, you're a dangerous person for not agreeing with the government. Get kicked off YouTube. Not a perfect parallel, but get your hate speech out of our campus. Yeah, man. I mean, I wouldn't say most of the examples I give are perfect parallels or metaphors or analogies at all. But I think you get the gist of what I'm telling you. And my thing is always to just get your brain stirring. Get to thinking about these things, getting the proper mindset and frame to see what is going on. And of course, I would suggest you listen to other people as well and get their perspectives. Have your own. I am not the end all and be all. Thus, if there exists a law which sanctions slavery or monopoly, oppression of or robbery in any form whatever, it must not be mentioned. For how can it be mentioned without damaging the respect which it inspires? Still further, morality and political economy must be taught from the point of view of this law, from the supposition that it must be a just law merely because it is a law. Fair enough. I think that was plain enough. I don't need to break that down any. Another effect of this tragic perversion of the law is that it gives an exaggerated importance to political passions and conflicts and to politics in general. Again, does this sound familiar? Does this sound like anything going on in society today? See, we probably didn't experience this as much for some years, probably from the 70s, late 70s up until the 2010s. Now, politics have always been there and the culture has always been there, but this hardcore thing that we're going through now is really what this is pointing to, right? And the reason why that's happening now is because, well, the socialists have a leg up. They have the institutions. That happened under Obama, which is why Antifa, BLM, and all of these things rose up under Obama. I in some articles about that too that maybe we'll cover later in the week, that all of the things that started under Obama, of course, most of us know this, but just to have it documented, just so we can talk about it for a little bit, we can see all of the riots and destructions and racial tensions rising, things that didn't exist really before in the United States for a long time until these people stirred them up. And part of this as well, folks, is related back to what I was just talking about in the cyber attacks, the cyber polygon, regulating the internet, all of these other things, because look, the reality is that it is the internet that has stirred these passions as people can communicate more and more. They are bringing up activities, organizations, and revolutions that young people and idiots will get behind because, well, they wish to follow their passions. Let's see. I could prove this assertion in 1,000 ways, but by way of illustration, I shall limit myself to the subject that has lately occupied the minds of everyone: universal suffrage. Who shall judge? The followers of Rousseau's school of thought. Again, I mentioned the Rousseauian mindset, and he talks about this. Descartes, another important philosophical figure that we have to dig into a little bit. But for the most part, Rousseauian philosophy is the philosophy, the blank slate philosophy of the left. So the followers of Rousseau's school of thought, who consider themselves far advanced, but whom I consider 20 centuries behind the times, will not agree with me on this. But universal suffrage, using the word in its strictest sense, is not one of those sacred dogmas which it is a crime to examine or doubt. In fact, serious objections may be made to universal suffrage. I seriously object to the idea. I think it's absolutely absurd and ridiculous to expect every member of society to be educated to vote. But I don't really believe in democracy either. So there's that. Now, I do like the structure of republics, but we didn't put enough fail-safes into ours. So either way, no matter what I would want for government, it would be scaled down. I prefer to have city-states be sort of autonomous. We can see the wealth that city-states create all around the world. City-states tend to be quite prosperous. I actually had a lefty once, a family member of mine, extended family member who's a lawyer, telling me that I mentioned something about the city-states, and he goes, "Oh, but then you have the have and the have-nots." I'm like, "Really? What are you talking about?" He's like, "Well, yeah, it's like you get all the power to collect it." I'm like, "No, you don't." I said that the majority of city-states in the world today are the highest, have the highest standards of living and income. The majority of them. But this is the stuff that lefties say. They say stuff that, well, that just isn't right. It's just not correct. It's just a belief. Someone told them something one time. And I think this conversation originally started with me talking about Walmart because it was around Thanksgiving. And the cashier at Walmart started talking to me. And I said, "Oh, well, do you get to be off tonight?" Because she was talking about the store closing or whatever. I don't even remember what was going on. She goes, "Well, no, I have to work, but it's really okay because, Walmart gives us a Thanksgiving dinner to all the employees and blah, 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 blah." And she was perfectly satisfied with it. But the lefty, the family member was like, "Oh, no, but they don't pay them enough and Walmart's evil and da-da-da-da." So again, he knew better for that lady. That's the kind of stuff I don't like. That's elitism, right? Look, I'm a lawyer. I make good money. And, your politics just aren't correct. And I know better because, well, look at me. I'm a lawyer and I make good money. I come from this family, this pedigree or whatever it might be. Man, if there's one thing that annoys me, it is that. It is look at my pedigree. Nope. I'll look at your abilities. How about that? The Dullhuck, we did have fail-safes, but then universal suffrage happened. Right. All right, back to the text here, guys. In the first place, the word universal conceals a gross fallacy. For example, there are 36 million people in France. Thus, to make the right of suffrage universal, there should be 36 million votes. But the most extended system permits only 9 million people to vote. 3 persons of the 4 are excluded. And more than this, they are excluded by the 4th. This 4th person advances the principle of incapacities in his reason for excluding the others. Universal suffrage means, then, universal suffrage for those who are capable. But there remains this question of fact. Who is capable? Are minors? No. Are females? Debatable. Insane persons? For sure, no. And persons who have committed certain major crimes, the only ones to be determined incapable? The reason why voting is restricted. A closer examination of the subject shows us the motive which causes the right of universal suffrage, or the right of suffrage, to be based upon the superstition of incapacity. The motive is that the elector or voter does not exercise his right for himself alone, but for everybody. The most extended elective system and the most restricted elective system are alike in this respect. They differ only in respect to who constitutes incapacity. It is not a difference of principle, but merely a difference of degree. If, as the republics of our present-day Greek and Roman schools of thought pretend, the right of suffrage arrives with one's birth, it would be an injustice for adults to prevent women and children from voting. Why are they prevented? Because they are presumed to be incapable. Sorry, feminists, but, not my words, his, but there's a reason, too. It's like I said, look at the demographics of who votes in all of these policies and who all hated Donald Trump. It was the suburban, rich, middle-class housewife. And I know those people too. They're not nearly as informed as they think they are. Like 90% of the time, they're quite naive. They don't understand the world. And of course, I don't like to be harsh with people, so I don't generally get into it with them. But I'm like, well, I don't think this is, I don't think that you need to look into this, or I don't think that's correct. But we see this. We see this, folks, in the numbers and in conversation. And then the other folks, of course, are the city folks who are just as idiotic, just as uneducated, and just as naive about how the world works, which is why they're in the midst of destroying their cities right now. It says, why are they prevented? Because they are presumed to be incapable. And why is the incapacity a motive for exclusion? Because it is not the voter alone who suffers the consequences of his vote, because each vote touches and affects everyone in the entire community. Because the people in the community have a right to demand some safeguards concerning the acts upon which their welfare and existence depends. The answer is to restrict the law, right? I know what might be said in answer to this, what the objections might be, but this is not the place to exhaust a conversation of this nature. I wish merely to observe here that this controversy over universal suffrage, as well as most other political questions, which agitates, excites, and overthrows nations, would lose nearly all of its importance if the law had always been what it ought to be. In fact, if law were restricted to protecting all persons, all liberties, and all property, if law were nothing more than an organized combination of individuals' rights to self-defense, if law were the obstacle, the check, the punisher of all oppression and plunder, it is likely that we citizens then would argue much about the extent of the franchise. Under these circumstances, it is likely that the extent of the right to vote would endanger that supreme good, the public peace. Is it likely that the excluded classes would refuse to peaceably await the coming of their right to vote? Is it likely that those who had the right to vote would jealously defend their privilege? If the law were confined to its proper functions, everyone's interest in the law would be the same. This is not clear that, under these circumstances, those who voted could not inconvenience those who did not vote. And then the fatal ideal of legal plunder. And that is the problem, because we use the law for legal plunder. Therefore, people vote who shouldn't be voting to plunder each other. The law is not used appropriately. All right, I see I got some stuff in the chat, so I'm going to look at this real quick. Hey, Val, good afternoon. Appreciate you showing up. Speaking of which, it has been another 30 minutes. So, guys, entropy in the chat if you wish to donate. You don't have to, obviously. D-Live, you can donate over there. Should be up and running right now. I did mess around with the widget this weekend on D-Live to just keep it really simple, to just chat and donations. But there's a call-in option. I don't know how it quite works. But if anyone wants to experiment with that, anyone wants to try it, I don't know how it'll work. I don't know if there'll be audio on my end that other people will hear. But hey, if you guys want to call in, we can try. We can experiment. But yes, you can also go over to my Subscribe Star. And of course, welcome and thank you all for showing up. So let's see how long this is. Not long at all. So let's read this before I get into... We'll do some heaven and earth so I can take a little break, and then we'll get to Jefferson's original Constitution. By the way, if you guys are just showing up, I covered the first... Well, first, I started late because my OBS was acting crazy, the stream wasn't working, whatever. But the first thing I covered was the pipeline cyber attack and how the World Economic Forum was pushing the idea of a cyber attack, much like they did with Event 201 and a viral attack, and how these things are very coincidental and how they're in line with what they want with their environmental policies and their control and takeover of the of the people, more or less. I was going to say the government, but the people, really. So different subject, and that was just something that I caught wind of. I was going to cover Cyber Polygon some months ago and never got around to it. But then this attack happened, and people are potentially going to face gas shortages and price rises because of this. And it's all in line with what they want. They present what they want, though, by saying, well, this is a possibility that could happen. In any case. So the fatal idea of legal plunder. But on the other hand, imagine that this fatal principle has been introduced under the pretense of organization, regulation, protection, or encouragement. The law takes property from one person and gives it to another. The law takes the wealth of all and gives it to a few. Whether farmers, manufacturers, ship owners, artists, or comedians, under these circumstances, then certainly every class will aspire to grasp the law, and logically so. The excluded class will furiously demand their right to vote and will overthrow society rather than not to obtain it. Even beggars and vagabonds will then prove to you that they also have an incontestable title to vote. So let's break down that first part again. He's basically making the point of that universal suffrage is not a good thing and what will happen when you do that. Just learning entropy, Holly? Yeah. Oh, I missed this from you, Sam. It says, been watching Scrump and Trigger Happy going over the process of mass democratization into the turn of the 20th century. Yeah, man. And the interesting thing with Klaus Schwab is when you read his works too, that he says very specifically that there wasn't enough authoritarianism in the 20th century, more or less is what he says. Which is just absolutely absurd. So it says, but on the other hand, imagine this fatal principle has been introduced under the pretenses of organization, regulation, blah 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 blah. The idea that you could plunder from one another just by voting for it, which is what we do. It's what we've been doing for quite a long time. This is why democracy does not work. It never worked. The Greeks had to bring in Solon to create the law. I thought about covering this sometime too in the old Athenian constitution. But the Greeks had to bring in Solon, who created the law. He was the lawgiver. And the idea that Solon had was a communistic idea. We can't let too many people get wealthy, and we can't let too many people get poor. We have to maintain the balance between the classes and the people. And we're going to do that by giving people stipends and all this other stuff. And then on top of that, we're going to make sure that everyone participates in the democracy. And seemed like a good idea, but there are a lot of issues with it. And it eventually led to oligarchy and empire, as it always does. It always does. The excluded classes will furiously demand their right to vote and will overthrow society rather than not to obtain it. And again, that's what's going on now. Even the beggars and vagabonds, the undesirables, the people in the streets that contribute nothing to society will demand that they get to dictate how society works. This is the exact sentiment that I have when I'm talking about the trashy people who are criminals who go in the street and they riot and they loot and they loiter and in some cases, beat and murder people. The same people, and all of them are, I guarantee you, lifelong criminals. I guarantee you. And that's how that works, folks. Trust me. I know people that would get out of jail and be in jail, working in the county system, be in jail an hour later because they commit a crime right away. Or they'd be gone for a month and you see them again. It's just their life. It's what they do. They might even go down to state prison and then somehow they got out on parole and then you see them again. Rolling through over and over and over. It is how they live. And those people, I don't think, have a right to vote. I don't think that they contribute to society. They take more than they contribute. We cannot buy wine, tobacco, or salt without paying the tax. And a part of the tax that we pay is given by law in privileges and subsidies to men who are richer than we are. Others use the law to raise the price of bread, meat, iron, or cloth. That's what they're doing right now. Burn, loot, murder crowd. That's right, Sam. Thus, since everyone else uses the law for his own profit, we also would like to use the law for our own profit. We demand from the law the right to relief. Sound familiar? Does this sound like reparations to you? Because that's what he's talking about, which is the poor man's plunder. To obtain this right, we also should be voters and legislators in order that we may organize beggary on a grand scale for our own class, as you have organized protection on a grand scale for your class. Does this sound at all like a reflection of what BLM or Antifa are saying today, like AOC or Ilhan Omar? Anyone on the left, the Young Turks, does it not sound like that? And you might say, but Bill, but this isn't talking about victimhood or any of that. No, it's not. But regardless, they do the victim thing to get emotional support. The reality is that they are trying to make the law protect them and basically, line their pockets. And what happens is they throw a little bit to the poor always. That's what, by the way, universal health care in the United States was about. Centralized health care was they sold that by talking about the poor. But the poor don't use health care that way anyways because they always had access to other means. And I've been poor and had to use health care. I've had my medical bills written off in the past, literally. So written off by the hospital because I was near indigent. So that was all an excuse. The reality is it's just they want to control the industry. That's the reality of it. They want to dictate who gets medical care. Listen to the left now when they say, well, these certain people, if they don't want to comply with mask mandates or they don't want to do lockdowns, they don't want to do this and that, then they shouldn't get health care. That has happened. That did happen. They have said these things, and they will continue to say these things. I probably am going to have a meme on Wednesday, with someone talking about these kind of things where they're like, oh, yeah, or yay, let's celebrate all this, love you all, da da da, everyone's so great, blah, blah, blah. But you people won't wear a mask, I hope you die. That kind of stuff, right? These people are not moral, folks. I'm not wishing for their deaths. I am asking that they wake up out of their slumber and stop being naive and stop asking for tyranny, because that's what they vote for. They vote for tyranny. Now, don't tell us beggars that you will act for us and then toss us, as Mr. Memrel proposes, 600,000 francs to keep us quiet, like throwing us a bone to gnaw. We have other claims, and anyway, we wish to bargain for ourselves as other classes have bargained for themselves. And what can you say to answer that argument? And it says perverted laws cause conflict. So with that, though, we are going to stop there with Bastiat for the day, lest I continue to go on forever. I need a little break. I need some more water. I need to use the bathroom. Not to get too personal here, guys, but I'm a mover. I can't sit still this long. In any case, I'm going to play some Heaven and Earth. We're going to get to the declaration here in a bit. And hope you guys are continuing to enjoy. Let me check the chat real quick. Let's see. They also, let's see. Sam said, burn, loot, murder. Yeah, I got to that. Anarcho, tyrannical fascist, otherwise known as Antifa. Yeah. They also use the law to increase the price of movement. Spain, for example, wants to make all roads into toll roads. Right. And that actually isn't a bad idea if it's privatized, but when the government does it, it's bad. It always is. And we can argue about that, and I'm sure there's some big brain socialists to be like, no. Every time, folks, the private industry does it, they lower the cost. When the government starts doing the toll roads and the public transportation or whatever, the costs go up, and because there's more inefficiencies. It's the bottom line. There's more inefficiencies, and if you don't pay it up front somewhere, you pay it in the back end elsewhere. I promise you. And the way that they do budgeting and taxation. They say that in Europe too, if you don't wear a mask, you shouldn't get health care. Okay, then I'll have it deducted from my taxes then. Right, but it doesn't work that way. Exactly. National divorce must be a legal separation. Unfortunately, that divorce is going to not be easy, and it will get violent eventually. Hopefully it's not mass spread violence and mass civil war, but hard to say. Got autocorrected to refer. Yeah, whatever. Refer. Like reefer madness. Anyways, guys. Let's play Heaven on Earth. I do believe I'm about where we stopped off at. The War of Northern Aggression. Things are different, though, man. Like, let's not think that this is going to play out like it did last time. We probably will split. Probably will balkanize, but we won't be recognized by DC. I'm not going to go dark, but when when Fiona comes, I have the baby here. I will not be on this as much. I probably will stream on here still, like once or twice a week, is what I'm thinking right now. But I'm really going to knock out this book, and hopefully you all purchase a copy when I get it published, get it done, because it's going to kind of lay out you'll see that I wrote this. I'm going to write it under a pseudonym, by the way, but you'll see that I wrote this, and you'll see everything that I'm talking about now, how it will be presented in a narrative form, and how this will reflect the way I think the world will be in about 30 years. So, and hopefully I'm wrong, like literally. I wish to be wrong.
In America, too, workers were organizing, but they would choose a very different path. Led by a straight-talking cigar maker named Samuel Gompers.
The irony about Sam Gompers is that he was a Marxist who forged an anti-Marxist labor movement. Gompers was born in a poor family in London and moved to the United States in his teens, becomes a skilled cigar maker. And all this time, he is a socialist. He's reading Marx, he's reading Engels, he's reading other classics of European socialism. And he believes that the best way to organize workers to demand their emancipation, the best way to achieve socialism is by making the trade unions themselves stronger.
Gompers rejected the idea that workers needed radical intellectuals to help them achieve their goals. I saw that betterment for working men must come primarily through working men, he wrote. I saw the danger of entangling alliances with intellectuals who did not understand that to experiment with the labor movement was to experiment with human life. Gompers and his allies favored something called pure and simple unionism. It meant using strikes and boycotts to fight for better pay and benefits rather than taking political action to create a whole new system. In 1886, Gompers helped found the American Federation of Labor, uniting individual unions across the country. As the AFL's first president, his salary would be less than he earned rolling cigars. Gompers' leadership of American workers would be challenged by socialists within and without the AFL. In 1901, some of these socialists came together to form the Socialist Party of America. At the party's helm was a rival labor leader, a railway man named Eugene V. Debs.
Debs is a fascinating figure because he's one of these perennial candidates who runs for president 5 times as a Socialist Party candidate. He achieves at most 6% of the vote, which he gets in 1912. But he's an enormously popular, charismatic figure, much more than Gompers ever was.
Originally, Gompers had hoped he and Debs would work together, but he ended up calling Debs the apostle of failure. He was involved with the Western Labor Union, then the American Labor Union, then the IWW, and Gompers felt any attempt to organize a rival trade union was, in effect, doing the employer's job to weaken the union. You then had union fighting union.
By 1903, the American Federation of Labor represented more than 1.5 million union members and was becoming a force to be reckoned with in American life. At that year's AFL convention, Gompers forever parted ways with his old allies. I want to tell you, socialists, he said, I have kept close watch upon your doctrines for 30 years, have been closely associated with many of you, and I want to say that I am entirely at variance with your philosophy. Economically, you are unsound, socially, you are wrong, industrially, you are an impossibility. Despite Gompers' opposition, the Socialist Party continued to gain strength. Surprisingly, the party drew more support from farmers than from industrial workers. One of the greatest centers of socialist support was Oklahoma. Eugene Debs won more than 16% of the presidential vote there in 1912. But America's entry to World War I brought a turning point for the party.
In World War I, socialists in this country and around the world have to decide, will they support their individual nations in the war, or will they support the International Socialist Brotherhood and oppose the war of workers against other workers? And the American Socialist Party, unlike most of the European socialist parties, decides to oppose the U.S. government and to oppose World War I. And most trade unionists, Gompers as their leader, support the war.
The more moderate socialists leave the party and actually work with Gompers in the AFL. The more radical socialists start speaking out against the war, and they are arrested. Eugene Debs gets arrested in 1918, gets sentenced to 10 years in jail. And by the time he comes out of jail in 1921, when he's pardoned, the Socialist Party is pretty much a shell.
The party would never regain its pre-war strength, not even during the Great Depression. Gompers and the American Federation of Labor, later the AFL-CIO, had won out as the principal voice of America's workers.
In many ways, Americanism proved to be a substitute for socialism for a lot of workers. After all, Americanism has always stood for the average person being able to make it. The American standard of living is something that all Americans should be able to enjoy. So the idea of class equality is something that undergirded the strength of socialism in Europe, but it's always been part of the American vision as well. So in many ways, Americanism trumped socialism and made socialism unnecessary as a vision for a lot of American workers.
That's an interesting perspective. I don't think I agree with. Unions are generally quasi-socialistic organization because they control the price of labor artificially. So this is done through collectivism, collective bargaining, again, a socialistic strategy, and enforced by the governments. So we can talk about how, well, America didn't really embrace socialism, but some of the things they talked about with the labor unions rising up in the beginning, toward the end of the 1800s, led to our socialist holiday of Labor Day. And that's really the origins of it, was to appease the socialist and the anarchist. And to say that, I forget which president it was, but to say essentially that, hey, we're in solidarity with you as a nation. We respect workers' rights and this idea. But socialism wasn't ever halted here in the United States. It was just obfuscated. It was just hidden. It became esoteric. And what we did was we started having more and more government policies, more and more government subsidies, and then all of a sudden the government just came in and more or less completely took over the economy. Now, that was not fully implemented, a full takeover, but it was ever expanding into it. And then by the 1950s, we kind of backed off some of those regulations, even though we still had really high tax rates. And it wasn't until, I don't know, the 60s, 70s-ish period that we just restructured everything into a full-on global government. Because we kind of had that before with that central authoritarian mode. But again, we have to look at who's pulling the strings. And when we got rid of Bretton Woods, that was a sign that we didn't care anymore about America, and we cared about the larger picture of the globe. And yes, this is like when the teacher, I like that comment, the teacher's playing videos during class. Yeah, but most of you don't know about this this documentary, which hopefully you've watched on your own by now. But if not, we'll watch it in parts. And yeah, it gives me a break. Lets me get up. Had some cheese there. Needed that.
But socialism would yet find life in North America. As the Socialist Party faded from the U.S. political scene, some of the farmers who had embraced its ideals would take their politics north, to Canada.
Today, Americans think of Canada as a more radical, a more socialist place. Well, the irony is that Canada's first socialist politicians, Canada's first socialist intellectuals are Americans. And that is something that people today have forgotten. Socialism, when it comes to Canada in an effective way, is an American import.
Between 1898 and 1915, nearly 1 million people emigrated from America to Canada. Lured by cheap farmland, most settled in the western Canadian provinces of Alberta, Saskatchewan, and Manitoba. The
That's right,
last
Holly, you're
North
actually
American frontier. They brought their knowledge of how to wrest a living from the soil and a set of political convictions rooted in their experience.
Farmers in the prairie provinces of Canada and the northern Great Plains of the United States all faced similar problems in the early 20th century. They were all growing wheat. They felt that they were being gouged by the railroads, by the bankers. They felt that the market conditions were working against them. Rather than seeing this in terms of impersonal market forces, they personalized it and viewed bankers, railroad men, lawyers as the enemy.
The way you express your protest at the turn of the century is, hey, wait a minute, why don't we nationalize these things? And from that, as the institutions resist, you move fairly logically and pretty quickly towards radicalism. And they're radicalized in Canada in the same way, by the same people, in the same organizations as they are in the United States. But let me emphasize, these organizations start not in Canada, but in the United States.
Every major U.S. farmers' organization would resurface in Canada in some form. By the 1920s, these organizations and their successors began to make their voices heard throughout the prairie provinces.
They were very soon able to influence electoral politics in Manitoba, Saskatchewan, and Alberta simply by the power of their numbers. But it's really not until the Great Depression begins on the prairies, really in the 1920s, not the 1930s, with drought, with the collapse of the wheat market, that farmers begin to contemplate forming their own independent political force.
In 1932, a new political...
Now, let me remind you all that agrarian life is not a life of wealth. So, I'm just saying, let's get some things straight here. You, as a farmer, are basically doing the most basic level of societal work. Because if we extracted this out to being alone, or just our families with no help from society, we are all going to have to farm. Right? It's a basic subsistence economy. Things that bring wealth, that's more things like inventions, creations that help that subsistence come about more easily, that make your labor a lot less effortful. So there are that. Of course, there are the arts. There are maybe services for learning new skills. Those things tend to make people wealthy. Agriculture itself does not. So for farmers to unite and be like, oh, we need to, have the government help us out. I mean, I get it, but I think I'd rather have done that through some sort of church organization or fraternity or something myself. That's generally going to be my approach. Family. Maybe you just have to pick up and move. Even if you own the land, which people really would have owned the land back in the day, not like it is today where you basically just rent it through property taxes. But if you did own the land, consider the idea that perhaps you could come back to it. And I get it. People were a lot poorer back in the day, but yet somehow back in those days when people were poor, there was less luxury, less technology. They seemed to be far more mobile. Now we just sit and stay in one place. It's really strange, and not that I listen to Shapiro very often, but he talks about this a lot, and that American spirit. In fact, he had an interview I watched a segment of with Andrew Yang the other day, and Andrew Yang talked about this too. People just will not get up and move to where the economic opportunity is. And I get it. Sometimes you get sort of stuck. Like, I know that if I had not had my daughter and I'd separated from my ex-wife, I probably would not be living in this area. I probably would have moved away a long time ago. But, things get people stuck. I also had a certain mindset at the time as well, though. So let's play a few more minutes of this, and then we'll get into the original draft of the Declaration.
Party emerged from a conference in Saskatchewan, the Cooperative Commonwealth Federation, the CCF.
The CCF is a kind of big bang among radical groups. Radical farmers, socialist labor unions, and radicalized socialist intellectuals, many in universities, many also in the Protestant churches. And they get together and they write a platform that calls for the socialization, essentially, of the means of production and the means of finance. I mean, it is a classic socialist platform.
The party would later moderate its platform to appeal to a broader base. In 1944, the CCF swept the provincial elections in Saskatchewan, becoming the first socialist government in North America.
Well, there you go. And Holly had said in the chat that Saskatchewan is interesting because they actually have the Saskatchewan Party. So, yeah, I mean, again, this is just a history of how things unfolded as far as socialism. And it's not all-inclusive, but it's a pretty good documentary. But I'm going to leave it there for now. We'll come back to that tomorrow. We'll watch another, 20 minutes or so of it. I have a few things. One thing I kind of wanted to address, but I didn't get to, so maybe we'll talk about it tomorrow, was this video that
tube censorship
that Salty Cracker released today. Because it talks about some of the stuff that's been going on down in Baltimore and whatever else, but not a big deal. You can go watch this channel. I'll probably address it tomorrow because I said I would get to this, so why not finish with this? By the way, folks, once again, for the last time, you may donate if you were just joining us with the Entropy link. Entropy is a way for you to say what you wish to say, to have free speech, and to donate without me being, having to have so many subs or follow YouTube's corporate guidelines or whatever they are in the moment. There's also a subscribe star and a link to the D Live, so you can donate over there as well, as they use a crypto. Saskatchewan, me, Holly. Oh, okay. Okay. I see that as soon as I said that, it popped up in the chat. I pronounced it correctly. Well, golly. All right, guys. So this is the original draft of the Declaration of Independence. I believe there were 80 some odd edits done by Franklin, and I forget who the other gentleman was. Might have been Hamilton. I can't recall. They took out a lot. They took out quite a bit. And so people don't know this, and so they'll point to the draft that was finally sent to the king, and they'll say fake things like, the 1619 or the Lincoln Project say, like, America was built on the back of slavery. To some degree, sure, but it was mostly impressed upon them, and a lot of the leadership in the Americas at the time did not want such a thing to occur, which will come up in this. A declaration of the representatives of the United States of America in general, Congress assembled, when in the course of human events it becomes necessary for a people to advance from that subordination to which they heretofore remain, and to assume among the powers of the earth the equal and independent station in which the laws of nature of a nature's God entitle them, a decent respect to the opinions of mankind requires that they should declare the cause which impel them to the change. He's saying, when these things happen, we should at least say, this is why we believe that there needs to be a change. We hold these truths to be sacred and undeniable, that all men are created equal and independent, that from the equal creation they deserve right, inherent, and inalienable, among which are the preservations of life and liberty and the pursuit of happiness, that to secure those ends, governments are instituted among them, deriving their just powers from the consent of the governed, that whenever any form of government shall become destructive of those ends, it is the right of the people to alter or to abolish it, and to institute new government laying its foundations on such principles and organizing its powers in such form as to them shall seem most likely to affect their safety and happiness. Prudence indeed will dictate that governments long established should not be changed for light and transient causes. Meaning we shouldn't just tip our governments over. We shouldn't just destroy them. This is, of course, the conservative argument of why groups like Antifa and BLM must be stopped, because they want to burn everything down and start over. And it's not easy to start over. In fact, what you'll find is in almost every case where a new government is established, the starting over is a reflection upon some other established government, either historically or currently. Let's see. All according to experience hath shown that mankind are more disposed to suffer while evils are sufferable than to right themselves by abolishing the forms to which they are accustomed. But when a long train of abuse or usurpations begun at a distinguished period, usurpations began at a distinguished period and pursuing invariably the same object, invices a design to subject them to arbitrary power. It is their right, it is their duty to throw off such government and provide new guards for the future security. Such has been the patent sufferance of these colonies, and such is now the necessity which constrains them from expunge their former systems of government. The history of this present majesty is the history of unremitting injuries and usurpations, among which no one fact stands single or solitary to contradict the uniform tenure of the rest, all of which have in direct object the establishment of an absolute tyranny over these states. To prove this fact, let's be submitted to a candid world, for the truth of which we privilege the faith yet unsullied by falsehoods. So, more or less, right, we all know the Declaration of Independence. This isn't too much different per se, but there were a lot of edits. But more or less, he's saying, yeah, we have the right to abolish the government. The government isn't correct right now. And this is the same thing that many of us are saying today. Now, this is not going to happen on a federal level. This may happen on a state level to some degree, but what it will be is the states pulling back and away from the federal government and not taking in subsidies from the federal government, which they do, money that the federal government gets hands down when they comply with federal rulings and laws. This is how they got all of the states eventually to up the drinking age to 21, because they were withholding federal highway funds for any state that left it at 18. That happened under Reagan with the Moms Against Drunk Driving and Nancy Reagan. So this is why we have a 21-year-old drinking age, which is fine enough, sure. I mean, we could probably do it at a much younger age, and it would still be fine. We did for most of our history. But we basically think that people are mature enough to vote today at 18, but not mature enough to drink. It's interesting. Which one is more consequential to the whole of society? Because people go out and drink all the time. People go out and drink and drive all the time and never cause any real problem. In fact, most of them, I would say, if they get caught, they get in trouble. It's a problem for them. But generally speaking, it's not a huge problem where people are driving around on the streets drunk, getting in car wrecks. Of course, it happens. But was that because we upped the age by a few years? Or was that a greater societal thing? So just some food for thought there. Hey, Matt. Emergency. 18 here. Wait, I don't even know what you guys are talking about now. What's going on? All right. Let's see how much time I have here. He has refused his assent to laws, the most wholesome and necessary for the public good. He has forbidden his governors to pass laws of immediate and pressing importance. This is pretty important too, because this actually reflects back to the letter that is attributed to Benjamin Franklin, where he says that without what's the saying? Without if you give up necessary security for liberty, you deserve neither, or whatever. So paraphrasing of that. That was a situation where the governor of Pennsylvania was not implementing rules because the king basically said, "No, don't do it," and that would have helped the settlers at the time tremendously against attack from natives in the area. So it says, unless suspended in their operations till this assessment should be obtained, and when so suspended, he has neglected utterly to attend to them. He has refused to pass under law for the accommodation of large districts of people unless these or those people would relinquish the right of representation, a right inestimable to them and formidable to tyrants alone. He has dissolved representative houses repeatedly and continually for opposing, with mainly firmness, his envisions on the rights of people. Now, again, I could break all of this down. If you just want to look at it, you want to look it up. Obviously, you can see it on your screen now if you're not listening to me on just audio. Start thinking about these as far as what the government does today, because we're doing very similar things. We're doing very similar things from the federal level. State levels do similar things as well, but I can't speak to each state. But on the federal level, the government, the governing body that unifies us here in the United States, are definitely doing political persecutions, right? They are intimidating their governors. They're backing certain ones. They're saying other ones are bad people, Neanderthal thinking, right? Ron DeSantis in Texas, Ron DeSantis in Florida, and when Texas and Abbott opened up, it was Neanderthal thinking. Of course, we know of the hunting down of these political parties, these people with these political points of view, and the 440 some odd people that have been arrested because they walked through the Capitol building. And journalists will be gone after, and numerous other things will happen because they did it under the Obama administration. And this is the state now, folks. And I'm telling you, Republican or Democrat, this is the way it'll go. Unless you get someone in there who's super based, you're basically going to get in Mitt Romney type candidates. And they're just going to go all along with the big state globalist policies. He has refused for a long space of time to cause others to be elected, whereby the legislative powers incapable of annihilation have returned to the people at large for their exercise, the state remaining in the meantime exposed to all the dangers of invasion from without convulsions within. He has endeavored to prevent the population of these states, for that purpose, obstructing the laws for naturalization of foreigners, refuses to pass others to encourage their migrations hither, and raising the conditions of a new appropriations of lands. This is interesting because he's talking about opening up lands for people who want to immigrate, but he's talking about Englishmen, right? Or friends of the crown, at least, because some Dutch did come over in other parts, but it was very limited. But he's talking about immigration and not regulating it properly. And again, we have this same problem, do we not? He has suffered the administration of justice totally to cease in some of those colonies, refusing to assent to laws for establishing judiciary powers. Well, we got a problem with the judiciary today. Now, this is about establishing those powers, but recall that the judiciary would not look at any of they kept dismissing the cases on the accusations that the 2020 election was not on the up and up, right? And that's absurd. You have to go through the evidence to see it, especially for the whole health and well-being of the population, for their mental stability. You got lawyers now fighting the Arizona audit. The election's over. Biden's the president. He's not going to be kicked out of office. Why? Why? Because they don't want you to know the truth, and it's about power. It's about power and control. That's why there's manipulations. He has made our judges dependent on his will alone for the tenure of their offices and the amount of their salaries. And again, which that kind of thing is a reason why we set up our judiciary the way that we did. Yet we didn't have enough safeguards because our judiciaries are highly, highly political and run by activists and leftists. But again, guys, it's the default of the world. This is why you shouldn't be surprised at these things. You should just understand that they will happen and that we have a duty and an obligation to teach our younger generations that these are the inevitable things that will happen because human beings are a bunch of freaking idiots who basically can't get along unless somebody gets to be a bully. That's the reality of it. That's not true. Of course, we can get along without having people in a power and authority and bullying and whatever else. But we tend not to go that direction. He has made our judges dependent. Yeah, okay. He has eradicated a multitude of new offices by a self-assumed power and sent hither swarms of officers to harass our people and to eat out their substance. He has kept among us in times of peace standing armies and ships of war. That should be a really big one for everybody. If you don't understand the consequences of having standing armies in a war machine, folks, I don't know why you're listening to my channel, because this is one of the things that has eroded away our liberty over the last 100 years. He is affected to render the military independent and of a superior to the civilian power. Sound familiar? Pretty sure we do that now, even if it's not the military per se, and we're talking about civilian power. The individual citizens. Look at the police force. He has combined with others to subject us to a jurisdiction foreign to our Constitution and acknowledged by our laws, giving his assent to the pretended acts of legislation for quartering large bodies of armed troops among us. That is one thing we don't have to worry about so much. But what's going on in Washington, D.C. right now? Are they not quartering troops? Because they are. Or at least they were. Now, it might not have been in people's homes, but parking decks, that's private property all the same. Look, another thing on this, this civilian powers and independence and all that stuff. Like, look, guys, we're moving toward federal police and military police in our cities. They can't exercise the kind of control that they would like in the more rural areas, the countryside, but they can absolutely do that to the cities, and they can help try to funnel people into those cities and build up the areas around them, that is suburbia, and the urban sprawl. It's a lot easier for them to control those things. And of course, once they get their little chip into everybody, it's a whole nother deal. All right. I saw there was a bunch of stuff going on in the chat here, but I wanted to give it a minute. Oh, drinking age is 18 in Canada. Yeah. Cars are much safer today also. This text remind me of that concoction emergency. Empty hollow lingo that somehow justifies seizure of power and stripping off rights. Saskatchewan, the drinking laws are looser. I know that I have a friend that lives in Serbia, and he's told me that over there that when they drink, and you, no matter how drunk you are and you go and drive home, what you do is you just drive in the middle of the road and you turn on your high beams. when you come up behind a car and you flash at them, and the person will pull over and let you get ahead of them and let you get home. To me, that's a custom or tradition that they do. It's perfectly respectable. I mean, why do you want? Anytime I see someone I think's drunk that's driving, you know what I do? I get as far away from them as possible. I'm like, I'm going to let that guy get ahead of me, and I'm going to pull back. So different strokes for different folks, but the old world does have some good solutions to things, because, well, they aren't always one to turn to the police right away, especially in areas like that where government forces have come in and caused many tragedy in recent years. True, while none of us would justify that irresponsibility, cars are far more safe than in the past. Safety, something going the speed limit. Yes, conservatism is just leftism going the speed limit. Yeah, you guys are more or less having conversations amongst yourselves, so that's cool. All right. For protecting them by a mock trial from punishment for any murders they should commit on the inhabitants of these states. Whew. Did we not just have a mock trial, folks? Just saying. Just saying. For cutting off our trade with all parts of the world. Didn't Donald Trump just open up trade, and isn't Biden looking about re-implementing those trade policies? For imposing taxes on us without our consent. Well, not going to get into that either. For depriving us of the benefit of trial by jury. We just had a jury trial that was a tainted jury trial. For transporting us beyond seas to be tried for pretended offenses. That's exactly what happened. And they weren't transported beyond seas or anything like that. They weren't locked up. But of course, we know there are FISA courts and all of those things that we do today. But as far as the old Chauvin case goes, could not get a fair trial in his area. There's no reason why they couldn't go to a remote county somewhere that was more conservative. But the judge refused it. You had the politicians, effectively the king, Joe Biden, talking about getting the right verdict for this. Of course, we had old Maxine Waters talking about, not allowing these things to happen and getting in people's faces and whatever else. You had Nancy Pelosi thanking George Floyd for dying so that basically they could have more power and authority. That's really what she was praying, right? Thank you, George Floyd, for giving the government an excuse to take over more power so that I might be able to lead this nation to the horrible place I want to take it. Thank you, George. It says, for taking away our charters and altering fundamentally the forms of our governments, for suspending our legislatures and declaring themselves invested with power to legislate for us in all cases whatsoever. And he goes on, I will get through the rest of this tomorrow. Like I said, I had other stuff that came up, guys. If you watch the beginning of the stream, that's what happened. So she's saying that small towns, the cops just escort you home safely. Well, that's the way it used to be here in the States. But then you got a national campaign by the former, governor of California and president, his wife, national campaign. She wasn't the only one involved, of course, to get the drinking age raised. And then the Fed said, oh, we're not going to give you money if you don't do it in your state. Funny how that works. So, I have a few other things I could get to, but they're random. Don't really need to do much more. It is 7 after 5, and it's been about an hour, guys, since I started because, I got started a little late. But I will be back tomorrow for certain, 3 p.m., 3 to 5 p.m. Oh, you know what? No, I won't be back tomorrow. Forgive me. I just remembered. I'm glad I said something. glad I remembered. I have to go down to Chantilly tomorrow with my wife for her checkup at the birthing center. So, won't be around tomorrow. I apologize. I will be back Wednesday. Wednesday I will return. So if you're looking for me tomorrow, it's not happening. I will be back Wednesday at 3 p.m. And of course, we will be doing the Ends Justify the Memes on Wednesday at 7 p.m. with our friend in the chat here, Holly. So guys, if you enjoyed this, of course, like, share, subscribe. That's the best way to, yep, see, wife's in the chat, even telling me, appointment at 1 p.m. tomorrow. Yeah, we're going to be gone all day. I mean, not all day, but, we have to drive down there. It's about an hour and a half drive, have the appointment, come back. Maybe I could stream, but I'm just going to say no and take the time to do something else. So I had to spend my evening yesterday rearranging the bedroom here. So there's other stuff to be done yet that I've yet to get to. Oh, thank you, Holly. I'm sure it'll go well. We're actually bringing down the lady from our birthing class because she's going to help. So she's never been to this birthing facility, but she's sat through lots of births, home births, and births at birthing centers. So that should be very helpful for me because I don't have anyone in my family I really trust to go along with the plan that we want to go along with, because they're going to be like, you need to take her to the hospital right now. You need to do this. You need to do that. And we're going to be like, no, we don't. And you need to get out of our face. And we're going to do this the proper way, the way that we have always done it for thousands of years as a species. Anyways, get off my high horse there. Let's see here. Check the timestamp on Heaven and Earth real quick. And let's see. Your parting shots. All right, guys. Well, again, I appreciate you viewing. I appreciate you sticking with me. I apologize for being a little late. Technical difficulties happen. I am not a tech guy. Fortunately, it all worked out. I don't know what happened. My OBS was being crazy. Everything was being crazy. So I got it up eventually. It worked. All right, folks. Thanks for watching. This has been All Minus One. My name is Bill, and I wish you all